This panel brought to you by Roanoke Indivisible and Indivisible at Virginia Tech. Introductions and intro by Daniel Moore, Biological Systems Engineering student at Virginia Tech.
I'll start with Dr. Jennifer Russell, and she works in the area of circular economy and sustainability and the flows of materials within economic consumption production systems and strategies for slowing and closing material loops. As co-author of the UNEP International Resource Panel publication, Redefining Value, the Manufacturing Revolution. Her background includes an emphasis on strategy for market transformation. Dr. Russell received her PhD in 2018 from Golisano Institute for Sustainability at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and her MBA from the University of Toronto in 2010. Prior to joining the department, the position she held was a lecturer in sustainable operations and supply chain and circular value chain in the MBA in Sustainability program at Bard College. Prior to pursuing academia, Dr. Russell worked as an industry consultant, industry sustainability consultant for 10 years for multinational CPG clients based across North America and Europe. Dr. Russell's research program is centered around the integration of and opportunities for circular economy systems and practice for sustainable materials utilization and management. This work spans sustainable materials, applications and packaging in the built environment, and circular practice including remanufacturing, refurbishment, repair, reuse, and recycling.
All right, so next is Dr. Brandy Faulkner. So Dr. Faulkner is a professor of Africana Studies and Political Science. Her research and teaching interests are in race and public policy and U.S. constitutional law. She's a multi-award-winning faculty member, some of which include the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences Teaching Excellence Award, its Diversity Award, the university's Edward S. Diggs Scholar Award, and its Principles of Community Award. She's a community-centered organizer who works with organizations and individuals engaged in advocacy, community leadership, and public policy development, specifically at the intersections of race, poverty, and environmental justice. So that's Dr. Brandy Faulkner. Now, Pete Johnson Jr., he was raised on farms and villages in Bedford County and Roanoke, Virginia. The systems of life, as in how things work and come to be, are extremely informative for him in all dimensions, from economics, society, nature, and many other aspects of human and environment enterprises. Attending VMI was an immersion in systems of education, ethics, sports, military, and other cultural matters. Pete played for the Chicago Bears. He didn't put that in his bio, but I think that's pretty cool. In the 1950s, engineering and electronics were emerging, so he accepted an offer to work in an IBM lab to learn and apply leading-edge information about computer design, hardware, software in the IBM organization. He's a strong interest in people and full-spectrum culture, and opened the way to finding solutions by working with small groups of people in organizations and local neighborhoods. His role has been project CEO and designer to analyze information system issues, identify problems and needs, and manage the complete cycle of new systems attainment. His methods include self-empowerment for all project participants, the system users, and other project-based benefactors. So that is Pete Johnson, guys. I think I want to start off, and I'll write some answers on the board, because I got my handy chalk right here. But when you hear the word sustainability, what do you think of? Is it the environment? Great answer. All right, there are no wrong answers here.
Long-lasting.
Long-lasting? Nice.
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Great, a very famous slogan. So.
Mine was, I was going to say multi-use.
Multi-use?
Kind of within that.
Similar, I'll put it up here, get more answers on the board. Saw him in the back.
Planning for the future.
Planning for the future. Making it work, guys. Sam?
Community.
Community. I like that answer. There's no wrong answers, but I do like that answer. Got any other ideas? I saw some hands over here, maybe. Yes. Green. All right. Any final thoughts?
Resources.
Resources. Yes, that's a good answer as well. All right, we have all of these ideas about what sustainability means here, and as you might have learned from here, or as you might have been thinking about in your heads, sustainability can have a lot of different ideas for a lot of different people, from different backgrounds. There's some ideas I'm sure you might have been thinking of that someone else might say that might not be here today. So as we go through today, we're going to help try and define sustainability, what it means, and what it looks like, and different ways we can think about it. So as we're going through, I'll take a couple ideas here as well, but what are some things we would be looking to sustain in this world? In our society, anything good doesn't have to be related to the environment or anything like that. Water. Yes, yeah, we got a lot of water resources. We got to make sure we can drink in a couple of years.
Clean air.
Clean air, yes, it's a good thing. There's been some rollbacks recently for that.
Energy.
Energy, yes. Peace, great answer, yes. A lot of different community relationships we can develop and sustain. So I like those answers as well. So we'll keep moving forward. So as we think about what we're looking to sustain and we've had all these ideas about sustainability, let's apply this to something that we might think of and we might need, our food systems. What are some things we want to sustain here, and maybe what are some things we don't want to sustain here? So there's no wrong answers again, so let's get some more ideas going. Yeah. Regenerative agriculture. I like that answer. I think Pete likes that answer as well. He's not here today. But yeah, when we talk about building ecosystems through agriculture, rather than something we might not want to sustain, is some practices like monocropping can really drain the resources from environments, and there's other different practices that have different effects on the environment. Sometimes you can deplete the environment rather than build it, even if it looks green, it looks really pretty. But if we focus on regenerating the environment, that can be a way we can build something that lasts. Any other ideas? Nutrient density, yes, that's a good thing related to, if our plants don't have any nutrients to take, they're not going to grow, right? So answer back there.
Access to healthy food.
Access to healthy food. Yes, that's a great one. I mean, we have 9 billion people. We're soon going to have 10 billion people. Eventually, it's probably going to happen. I don't think there's any way we can stop it. But it's a long topic. We got to figure out how we're going to feed 10 billion people. And they don't just need food; they need healthy food. They need good food. So that's a big thing to consider when we're talking about sustaining our food systems.
Minimize use of toxic pesticides.
Yeah, minimizing use of toxic pesticides. That could be sustaining our environments around our farms and things like that. I know I'm from the Chesapeake Bay area, so there's been a lot of efforts recently to sustain that. I'll get both of them, but I'll start here first.
Climate and the ability to use the land as it's been before.
Yeah, that's a great one. Those are great things we like to talk about. Our climate, we're seeing it's trending in a certain direction. We'd like to sustain it around a certain temperature that's better for us to live in, but we're not really getting there. And sustaining the traditions we have for the land and how we can use it better, that's a big thing as well. Traditions and good practices can be sustained.
You just spoke to the cultural foodways.
Yes, cultural foodways are a big thing. Everyone's got their different ways of using the land, and especially when it comes to conservation efforts, you can't minimize the impact culture will play into that. So.
Think about minimizing animal cruelty, factory farming.
Yeah.
Food systems, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Minimizing animal cruelty, I think it's a big thing that factors into a lot of people's decisions and can also play into our cultural norms and everything like that.
See, minimizing fertilizer runoff.
Yeah, that goes a lot with minimizing pesticides runoff, but those kind of different effects in the environment. You know, fertilizers create algal blooms and can lead to some dead spots in our water. I'll take one last one before we go.
Using water efficiently?
Yes, using water efficiently. I know someone said water earlier for a previous question, what we want to sustain. But yeah, water is a big thing when it comes to agriculture. Our crops need a lot to drink, and our environment likes to take a lot of it off the top. It likes to evaporate some water. So as we're going through, we have a couple different ways we can think about sustainability. So I've heard a lot of ideas. We talked a lot about culture. So we have this idea, I'll start with the image on the right, is the idea of a three-legged stool. So we can't have sustainability unless we have all three of our legs together, or else our stool's going to fall over, and we're not going to be sustainable. So we talk a lot about cultural traditions. A lot of those can impact our societal systems. We talk about equitable access to food. You know, everyone needs access to food. That's a big part of sustainability. If we're improving our food systems, but not everyone's getting food, is it really sustainable? Some people are probably not going to be happy they're not getting food, and you know, from an ethical standpoint, do we want to let that happen? Probably not. So economics can play into it as well. When we look at the farmer also has to be able to have enough money to live. You know, a lot of farmers can accumulate a lot of debt, or they take on a lot of risk by having this farm and having these food systems, but they need to have enough money to eat and live as much as us, and so do the people buying the food. They also need access to cheap, affordable food that's good for them. And of course our environmental systems, we talked about water, pesticide use, environmental protection, and regeneration. So another way to think about it would be this Venn diagram model. It's kind of the same thing. It's like our sustainable solutions are going to be in the middle here. They're going to involve thinking about the environment, our economic systems, and our societal systems together. And I've not seen it with these extra words in here, but when I was looking for an image, I saw that, and I thought that was a really cool way to think about how different aspects of these sustainability ideas and these systems we have in our world can interact with each other. So now, I have one last question for you guys. I have two more questions, but the last one's rhetorical. So our second last question here, why is sustainability political? I'll just take a couple ideas as we're going through. Policy, yes, involves policy.
We got conspiracy theorists.
Conspiracy theorists. Yeah, they can have a big impact on our sustainable ideas as well. Do you have an idea?
It's been historically framed as sacrifice, something people have to give up. So they now have a stake in that.
That's true, yeah. A lot of people, they don't want to give up, you know, and it might be framed as that as well. I think framing is a big thing that you need to consider. Shareholders, yes. A lot of shareholders have a lot of stake in our society today. And they have a lot of money and a lot of power.
I guess the use of the natural resources and the greed and wanting it all.
Yes, using our natural resources is 100% a big thing when it comes to making sustainability political, because everyone wants the land, they want to develop it, they want to use it for something else. People like having a lot of land, like doing different things with the land. Some of it can be good, some of it is not as good, and they're going to stand by that usually. So.
I think place as well, like think about people, what resources are available, climate, those types of things.
Yeah, for sure. Place is a huge thing. And there's another, I'll go back to this Venn diagram model for a second, a little side tangent. I've seen this Venn diagram drawn differently, where it has one big circle for the environment, and the middle is a circle for the society, and another one is a circle for economics in the middle of it. And it's a different way of thinking about it, but really emphasizes how that place and then those people impact how everything else is working, and how important those are. And those are huge aspects of our political society as well. So.
Because like how power is distributed in society kind of determines how sustainability can even be imagined in a realistic sense.
Yes, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. Good idea. That of course goes into economic power in terms of money, but it can also go into our societal power structures and our political structures as well. So I'll end. I ran a little over my time, so I'll pass it off. As we go about today, remember we're thinking, how can we build a more sustainable world? So hopefully you've got some ideas, you got some thinking you've done, and as we pass it off to the next person, I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Jennifer Russell, and hopefully she'll keep building on that. So, ready?
Thank you again for inviting me. I'm Jennifer Russell. A little bit of background just for context. So as you heard from my bio, I worked in business and industry for a really long time, trying to hammer against big companies to help them realize that they needed to think think differently about the resources they were using, the communities that they were impacting. I wasn't solving that problem very effectively in that job, so I quit. I went to a different company, hammered against that for another few years, wasn't getting anywhere. So I stepped back and I realized I need to change how I'm approaching this. And so that led me into continuing my education, which has been really focused on systems thinking. And so systems thinking is a tool that can be applied to anything, but it's been incredibly powerful in the work I'm trying to do with sustainability because it helps us to understand the symptoms we're seeing. We see a lot of symptoms of things going wrong. You know, inequality, suffering, degradation, climate change, these are all symptoms. They are the results that happen after the system has started to go off the rails. Being able to map and model and understand what is underlying that, how does it connect, and how do we actually then come up with interventions that prevent the problem from continuing, maybe mitigate it, rather than just doing what I had historically done, which is like, rail at the sky or try and run into the brick wall over and over again, not be quite as effective. So the things I'm going to talk to you about today are not going to be grounded in sustainability per se, but they're to present a way of thinking about big sustainability challenges so that we can feel more empowered as we go about this. And so that empowerment, I think, is one of the most critical things. It's not feeling like we're a victim of a circumstance or the situation, but we can figure out what's going on and where might we intervene and play with those levers to have an impact. So I'm not sure if anyone has heard the term wicked problems before. It's one of my favorite terms. It evokes a lot of feelings in there, but this is also the space that I play. Right? If the problem is easily solved, then that's not really where I'm going to get inspired or motivated. But it's been formally defined. A wicked problem is not just a hard problem, it's a problem whose structure resists definitive understanding and resolution. So this is like the key for most sustainability problems. Just responding to the symptom that we see is not going to be enough. There's a structural issue taking place that's leading to this outcome that we don't like. And just restoring this one plot of land, just planting a tree, is not going to fix the big problem because there's an underlying system that's at play, and it's a big, that's where the problem lies. So lots of examples of wicked problems are out there, but climate change is one, right? Poverty and inequality, urban planning, how to do that well. Public health crises, we've gone through several, we're in the midst of one right now nationally. Sustainability transitions. How do we move from one type of energy to a new type of energy, and all of the things that are at play. So, as I mentioned, wicked problems, they're not just hard problems, they're ones that are structurally resistant to being solved. And so you can start to recognize them if the problem itself is a point of argument. Right? Is climate change primarily an economic problem, a technology problem, a justice problem, or a governance problem? Depends on who you ask. And if you asked 4 people representing those positions at the same time, they'll probably start arguing with each other about who's got more clout in or stake in that solution finding or in making a problem. There's also no point at which you can say the problem is solved. When will we know we've solved climate change? When will we know we've solved poverty? So just stating that we want to solve a wicked problem is not really adequate because we actually can't. It's going to be something that we have to just notice over time that it's getting better or worse. But there's really no true or false answers to these problems. There's no finite, clear response. We're not going to necessarily know. And in all of these situations, there are going to be trade-offs. In the path to trying to mitigate the effects of climate change, there are going to have to be some sacrifices, but there will also be many benefits. And being aware that those all exist at the same time is part of creating buy-in and also being strategic. Wicked problems are also really, really annoying because we only learn after the damage or the change has happened. Oh gosh darn it. If only we had done that differently. And I'm sure you can all think of individual examples in your own lives or even at national and global scales that are going on right now. Fortunately, this is a way we can recognize it. There's going to be many, many ways to start pushing back against or finding solutions to wicked problems. This idea of equifinality. When you want to target climate change, we don't need one solution. We need hundreds of thousands of solutions all working together at the same time. And they all need to be thoughtful. And they should be as creative as possible. And how we frame those solutions really matters. I know, I'm sorry for the animated slides. I'm in lecture mode. I hope you'll forgive me. These problems are also really unique. They're super interconnected, but they're unique. Right? There's nowhere that we can look and point to say, oh, well, humans have had this problem in the past, so we can learn from that. And this is because there are almost always going to be symptoms of other problems, other wicked problems themselves. They tend to be nested. We see issues with poverty and equity and environmental justice nested in food system issues and in climate issues and in urban planning issues. They're all so interconnected. And this is one of the biggest issues with wicked problems. If you start to feel really overwhelmed when you think about how this spirals, that's how you know you're looking at a wicked problem. And that's okay, right? Just even recognizing it for what it is an important first step. It feels overwhelming, it feels incredibly disempowering. You probably need 100 people at the table to help fix it. But then you just started to lay out your plan as well. When you bring those 100 people to the table, all your different stakeholders, they're all going to have conflicting values. They're going to want different things out of this. So even if everybody's committed now to this challenge, they're going to want to negotiate. They're going to want to see it. You see this happening when we think of all of the different policies that have been evolving over time. Even if, let's just ignore the last year. Even the decade before, looking at transition to clean energy, electrification, the emergence of investment in resource extraction, and strategies like that. There's always conflicting values, and people can get something and lose something. We are going to disagree on the goals, we're going to disagree on what the trade-offs are and if they're acceptable, and there's unequal power in this, something that was mentioned before, definitely. The people who try to find those solutions will have full responsibility and no real authority. And so everyone who's watching will be very happy to tell you you failed, especially if you've been anyone working in an environmental or environmental justice space. The second it doesn't go perfectly, someone's going to tell you and be very proud that they've identified the failure. And also annoyingly, just when you think you've got your handle on the whole thing, it starts to change and evolve. Because it's connected to hundreds of other problems that are out there. So I don't say all of this to make you feel overwhelmed. The trick here is actually saying, yes, this is wicked. This is difficult. We have tools to actually move through that. We recognize wicked problems based on those symptoms, as we started to mention. We can say housing prices are rising. Rising being a symptom. Biodiversity is declining. Extreme weather is occurring more frequently, even if we don't collect the data on it anymore. But if that's the only thing that we fixate on, we're missing the bigger picture. We're missing that opportunity to actually shift the system. And that's what I mentioned. That's what needs to happen. We shift the system. Planting trees will only get us so far. Recycling will only get us so far. So that's not to say those things aren't important, but they need to be organized. They need to point in a direction. They need to be done with intention and understand how it fits into this one bigger picture. So if you've ever caught yourself facing one of these statements, I keep getting painkillers, I keep getting headaches, solve it with painkillers, I need better grades, so you cram, there's anyone in the room currently facing this situation. My personal, this house is always messy, I just have to keep cleaning it every Friday, that's my punishment. We don't actually want to live this way. The solution that we're seeking is not to just keep putting a Band-Aid on it, to dig into it. So this is where I'm going to pull you back out and say, okay, everybody familiar with the story of the Lorax? Dr. Seuss? Excellent. All right. What are some of the symptoms that are coming out in the central narrative of Lorax?
They're cutting down all the trees.
They're cutting down all the trees. Excellent. The trees are being cut down, and for the trees, this is a finite population.
Kind of like indifference. Like one sort was like, okay, let's do like a low more nonstop.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yes.
that's right.
There's feedbacks coming in, right? The Lorax is like, hey, hey, hey. Sorry, I have an 8-year-old at home, so this is like a very familiar story in my life right now. But
The watch is awesome.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
it's excellent for this thing I'm going to show you in a second too. But yeah, he's getting feedbacks and he's not listening to them, or he's trying to negotiate on it.
The animals are leaving.
The animals are leaving, yes. It's become so inhospitable that all of these species are now leaving. They can't live there anymore.
They sing that song that's like, how bad can it be or whatever, and everybody gets like, well, like lackadaisical about it. So
Yeah.
that,
Start to
like,
just adapt and accept.
yeah.
Things are bad. How bad can it be? I forgot about that. So the systems thinking work that comes in here is not just to observe all of these narratives and the symptoms, it's actually start creating a model that goes behind it. So this is a very simplified model. It's a causal loop diagram. But the way that this is working, on the green side, we have a balancing system. You'll see here the narrative truffula trees are used to make feeds. So we have truffula trees that are out there, and as the amount of truffula trees increase, right, they're going to meat production. And you can increase meat production, and everything's great because there's this demand for truffula trees. This keeps going and going and going. On this side, meat production is leading to more money for the Once-Lorenz family. And as they make more money, this desire for more money increases. And so they make more needs. And what you've got here is layering in a bunch of different systems, but also factoring in this challenge up here, which is the finite population of the truffula trees. You can only take so many of them. You have a reinforcing system on this side that says more, and a very practical constraint on that side. And if we wanted to make this more complex, we would add in the biodiversity loss. We would add in the increasing demand on resources when the Once-Lorenz whole family come to live there. And they scale up production, turn into economies of scale, all that fun stuff. But this type of organization of a problem helps us look at what's really going on underneath. These are causal loop diagrams, and they help us say not just what's happening, but why is it happening. So in this story, it's not too difficult to say, well, greed is driving this. But as someone mentioned, it wasn't really just a desire to decimate the environment and cause all kinds of damage. It was this incremental push for just a little bit more, under a lot of social pressure to do just a little bit more. And so it was not this malice that they go out into the world to try to kill off everything, but this very human desire to negotiate and improve slowly the best they can, keep everyone happy. So this analogy also kind of fits with, if you've heard of, how to boil a frog. So these incremental things, these incremental acceptances of things that are not great are also actually structural. And they're kind of coded into us behaviorally because we like membership and community matters to us and approval matters. Even if we work really hard to turn it off, it's still there. So causal loop diagrams help us to understand what's going on, and you can make them as complex as you want. I'm going to shift away from sustainability for a second and just show another way we can think about the systems models that help us understand problems. So you're familiar with why the chicken crossed the road. Get to the other side. Well, if you wanted to model this in terms of population, say you were worried about chickens, you have your chicken population, and if your chicken population goes up, then arguably your egg laying is going to go up, you have more eggs. And as you have more eggs, they hatch and they turn into more chickens. So you have this reinforcing population of chickens and eggs. And then you introduce the road crossings. So this is where it's a joke, and I apologize. I love chickens. I'm a vegetarian. I don't want them to die road crossings. But you can see how this system emerges, right? More chickens, higher probability they're going to try and cross the road for whatever reason they're doing it. And as they cross that road, higher probability there's going to be fewer chickens. So this really oversimplifies it, but you can see how this way of thinking about a dynamic is important because you can layer in politics, you can layer in actual resources, you can layer in behavior, all of those forces that we're aware of, but really only have descriptors to go with. Very rarely do we have the ability to quantify those things. But these models and ways of thinking can help us say, well, if one goes up, what happens to the other? If unemployment goes up, what happens to concern about food access? It goes up. Right? What happens if concern about food access goes up to something else? Maybe well-being or stress or household and community happiness. So you can start to model how those interconnect. You don't need data for it, you just need to understand the relationships. I'm going to take the chicken thing a little further, because again, this is a safe topic to explore how these work, because it doesn't have to be deeply personal, but there are people who go much more into this and say, well, you know what, we really need to think about the crossing rate and the hit rate, because not every chicken that crosses the road is going to get hit, and not every chicken is going to cross the road, so we can find data on this if we want. Other people take it a bit further. Well, On the egg side of things, not every egg that's laid is going to hatch. There's a laying rate factor here. There's a hatching rate, a gestation rate. Not all births are going to be successful, so we can't simplify that causal relationship so much. You can add in more data. And I'm hoping you're seeing a parallel here. Cutting down the trunk of the trees does not just lead to a singular outcome. It has all of these knock-on effects. Of course, academics like going deeper on lots of things. So in this case, in the case of the chickens, the demand for fried chicken becomes a part of this, the demand for omelets. Carrying capacity of the farm and how crowding might affect the chickens. So again, this is not to make light of the situation. This is actually to show how we can take something really simple and layer on more and more information to understand what's happening. And we can take that chicken and road crossing analogy all the way to this. This is a publication in the Journal of Earth and Environmental Sciences that looks specifically at land population depends, how that related to egg quantity, how that related to welfare, environmental quality, and everything associated with factory farming, and the communities that depended on that. The livestock business credit, the cooperative development, utilization of agricultural waste. So it gives us a foundation to actually come up with systematic ways for bringing qualitative and quantitative information together and think about how they interact. So I'm almost done, I'm sorry, I'm going over time. I just want to share a little bit about how I bring this into the work that I do. So this is the true sustainability example. As Daniel mentioned, I do a lot of work in material flows and minerals and access. Critical minerals have been a very big issue in the news lately. Our availability of resources is a big concern for an economic reason and therefore a political reason, and therefore a militarization reason, and therefore a well-being and security reason. In 2018, China implemented a ban on accepting plastic and waste materials from almost every country in the world. Up until 2018, China had taken all of our waste, and they built a massive industrial capacity to convert that waste into recycled content, recycled feedback. And because everybody was just exporting all their garbage to China, and China was taking care of it very efficiently and productively, nobody else built up any infrastructure. So I don't know if you remember in 2018, all of a sudden, recycling programs are saying, we actually can't recycle anymore. Don't send us your stuff. Or if you're going to keep recycling, only put these 3 types of things in your bin. Paper, PET, or #1 plastics, or HDPE, #2 plastics. Because everything else, we don't know what to do with, and we did not have domestic infrastructure capability to actually solve that problem. And so, using this type of model, you can see what happens as a result of this international dependency on someone else dealing with waste. So I'll map this out. I'm not going to go into huge details, but you'll see what emerges. The more that China accepted plastics for its recycling, the more the U.S. exported plastics to be recycled. Remember a time when anything was plastic could be put into the recycling bin and everything was fantastic, go recycling. We also started putting a bunch of other stuff in there. And this is what provoked the ban happening in the first place. The more that we just threw into the bin, the more contamination also went into it. And that meant it was becoming more and more expensive for China to deal with all of it. It's actually quite exploitative. We're sending all of our garbage there instead of just the value received. So as that contamination rate rose, China said, no, not accepting it anymore. So you can see this increase and decrease relationship taking place. The capacity for U.S. recycling came into question. We could not deal with any of these things, we couldn't export it, so we had to start stockpiling it. So if anybody pays municipal taxes, part of your taxes are going towards making sure that the space is there to store all of these materials that were theoretically recyclable if you had facilities to do it. And that also led people to start looking at the role of communities and people. The stockpile that was there, how does this relate to the number of programs that are running, the effectiveness of the programs that were running, the participation rate of people? Were these even working at all? In the absence of good programs, we ended up starting to see a lot more going into landfill, and there was a spike in litter that took place. And the cost to consumers across the board also went up. So in this very, very simple model, you can see how we're now talking about not just material flows, but behaviors, municipal concerns, land use, cost. And And what this also helped us to reveal was some of the solutions that might be out there. So as we had to start to think about alternatives, what came out was that there's actually a lot of revenue associated with plastics recycling. That was why China was doing it in the first place. If domestic capacity and interest could be leveraged, investing to build up our own ability to recycle, there's revenue there to do that. And when we do that, we get more facilities, we get more capacity, and more things start happening. And as we build all of that, a lot of the problems start to go away, and the system can then come into balance again. You know, there's a lot going on right here. But if you were to map out any problem that you're looking at, just start drawing these lines and then count the connections. You know, this one down here, participation in recycling has 5 connection points. Over here, revenue associated with plastic recycling is 4 connection points. But the one that I want to draw your attention to is at the very top. U.S. plastic recycling capacity, 6 connection points. What this means, most importantly, is if you can find the lever in the system that by shifting it has the greatest knock-on effect throughout the rest of the system. You fix this problem, and all of those other interconnections will start to also move in the direction you want them to go. That's your leverage point. Thank you for asking. So sorry I didn't say that. So S means they move in the same direction. As one goes up, the other goes up, or positive polarity. And then O, or minus, they move in opposite directions, or negative polarity. I'm so sorry, I should have said that earlier. But thank you for asking. So yeah, this denotes where if one goes up, what happens with the other? Increased meat production, what happens to the population of trees? Increased U.S. plastic recycling capacity, what happens to the others? You start to see quickly how you can alleviate the problems, you can reduce cost to customers, you can reduce the plastic stockpile, you can reduce what's being exported, you can increase revenues. When you map it all out, you start to see which strategic interventions actually get you closer to mitigating the wicked problem symptoms that we're trying to deal with. Those things are all interconnected, so you can start to see how you can surface that and pull it out. And it doesn't have to be pretty or PowerPoint. PowerPoint's not pretty, but I have my undergrad students do this, and it's a messy spaghetti map that you use markers on chart paper. But by the end, what they see is these ones that have so many lines attaching to them. And that's the starting point for the strategy. So that's why this is such an important way of thinking about all of these sustainability challenges that we're up against. It's because it gives us a starting point, and it helps us understand as well, if we do this, what might we expect? So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And did I go over time? Sorry,
I'm not tracking.
Thank you for letting me do all this. So yeah, I'll have Brandy come up next.
Thank you, Indivisible, for the invitation to be part of the panel. I want to be very clear before we begin about my positionality. I approach this subject from a community-based organizing perspective, and I also happen to be a professor and a scholar. But it is the centering of community and the community's concerns and needs that informs all of my policy approach. So I want to be very, very clear about that. So we're having a lot of conversations, right, about sustainability, about climate, about environmentalism and the impact that human beings are having on our planet. I think, though, it's also important for us to understand that we are also victimized by policy decisions, and that those policy decisions are what guide human behavior. So, for example, climate change has affected human health generally. We have way too many people suffering from respiratory diseases and heat-related illnesses and from severe weather, and all of this is directly related to environmental quality, greenhouse gas emissions, right, and fuel consumption. But the thing is, we are not all affected equally. Those who are already at the bottom, those who are in the margins, and those who are underrepresented and underserved, they are the ones who take the hardest hits. We do not all share equally in either costs or benefits of sustainability, and we have to keep that in mind as well. Therefore, we have to talk about these things holistically, alongside discussions of racism and sexism and capitalism and poverty and wage inadequacy and community well-being. All of that is included in my analysis of sustainability. In other words, we have to put sustainability in a context. But in whose context? And do we really have what it takes to make the kinds of decisions that are necessary to put future generations first? So, my definition that I use for sustainability comes from Wangari Maathai, the Kenyan Nobel Peace Prize winner, an environmentalist and founder of the Green Belt movement. She told us that sustainability is a holistic intersection of environmental and ecosystem resilience and restoration. So that's one part of it. Human rights is another part of it. And then democracy is the third part of it. Now that's quite a table for that. But what exactly is being sustained when we talk about sustainability? At simplest is earth, air, water, and fire. Our basic elements. And they have to be assessed as both opportunities and also threats. And that's because of our decision making. So we've got Earth, global land grabs, deforestation, something that Maathai worked on for her entire lifetime. Toxic agricultural processes, overconsumption of resources, all of these things that are causing destruction. Yet, we hesitate to form policies that are designed to stop those practices because, well, doesn't that limit our freedom? When we think about our air, decades before George Floyd whispered, "I can't breathe," in his last living moments, a community of poor Black families in Warren County, North Carolina, spoke those exact words as they were dying from air pollution related diseases and toxic waste dumping, a situation that kicked off the environmental justice movement in the United States. When we think about fire, we are seeing wars level trees and buildings alike, substantially affecting our food systems, driving millions away from their homelands as climate refugees, even as U.S. Border Patrol beats Haitian immigrants who are fleeing an earthquake and tropical storms. 21.5 million people are displaced annually due to climate change-related weather disasters. But we don't typically talk about that in the context of our day-to-day sustainability conversations. Sure, we have plenty of conversations about global warming, but few of them include things like incarcerated people dying from prison overheating. Last year in Virginia's General Assembly, there was a bill proposed to mitigate extreme heat in Virginia's prisons. It would have required a regular temperature check inside the cells. For now, they only check it in the exterior of the cells, not actually in the jail cells themselves, in the prison cells. This bill would have made that mandatory. It would have also made mandatory cooling equipment, such as fans, and extra water to be available when temperatures got above 80 degrees. and also more protection against extreme cold when temperatures drop below 60 degrees in the cell. This bill did not pass. Legislators very publicly, proudly, and without hesitation told us that people in prison don't deserve to have their needs considered. It's okay if a few of them literally cook to death inside of their cells. Maybe they just shouldn't go to prison. This was a discussion in our lawmaking body in the General Assembly. 3/4 of our planet, I am told, is water. But how much of it do we actually have to drink? 12 years have passed since 100,000 poverty-stricken people in Flint, Michigan were exposed to dangerously high levels of lead so that the city's administrators could save a buck by switching the water source. Many of those residents are still using single-use plastic water bottles, not just to drink, not just to cook, but to take baths because they no longer trust their government and what their government is telling them about the safety of the water. That's the sustainability issue. The framing matters. So why did Dr. Matai tell us that we can't have discussions about sustainability that don't include these intersections of race, class, and geography? Well, it's because when we think about it holistically, we understand that these discussions only make sense in the presence of social movements. Food prices should not be higher in poor communities, and food quality shouldn't be lower. Why do major food corporations get away with feeding people the foods that are killing them, that are making them sick? At this very moment, the United States Supreme Court is getting ready to decide whether Bayer Monsanto Corporation can be held legally liable for any disease or any harm that's caused by its $13 billion a year cash cow, known as the chemical herbicide and weed killer, Roundup. Within days, the court is going to make that decision. The average income for families that live within 3 miles of a fossil fuel plant or toxic waste dump, $18,400 a year. This is well below the national poverty wage for a family of 3. Why is that happening? We see similar disparities when we look at those in proximity to nuclear power plants as well. Black, Latinx, poor communities have substantially higher rates of asthma, cancer, cardiovascular disease, lung disease, low birth weight for children, all related to environmental toxins that they breathe on a daily basis. Black and poor communities are still targeted as prime sites for dumping chemical waste. The CDC found that 11.2% of Black children, 4% of Latinx children get lead poisoning from their environments, compared to only 2% of white children. Why the disparity? These are the kinds of inequities that matter to already overburdened communities. What does it tell us about the nature of our discussion around sustainability? We are right now out in communities all across the state having conversations, and these are some of the things that folks are talking to us about in those localities. Folks in Newport News are talking about their coal exposure, poor water quality in Lincoln Park, Brownsville's in the southeast, the flooding that they're facing. Folks in Lynchburg are telling us about development projects that are creating food deserts, about bulk trash removal, transportation issues, prison temperatures. The list goes on and on and on. We've got fracked gas pipelines being built through poor communities. Some of them we've been able to stop, like the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Others we have not yet been able to stop, like the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Poultry plant regulations, slumlords that are profiting from environmental disasters, water contaminants, data centers, pollution, poor air quality, all of these that are disproportionately affecting non-white, poor communities. Well, if we don't look at this holistically, if we don't understand the connections to people's everyday lives and existence, then what happens? The movements fail. Our discussions about sustainability don't include the people who are most affected, the people who bear the brunt of the impact. We don't talk to them. We talk about them. We use them as research subjects, but we're not talking to them because that requires a different type of engagement. We want to dazzle our audiences with overwhelming data, indigestible statistics, disconnected facts, and inevitably, these discussions end with a long list that will challenge people with even the best memories. Turn off the water while you brush your teeth. Recycle all of your plastic bottles and your aluminum cans. Skip the straw, you don't want to hurt the turtles. Go buy some solar panels for your home. What home? Pick up the litter that you see on the street. Bring your reusable tote when you get groceries at Walmart. Buy a reusable water bottle, but make sure it's a Stanley water bottle because sustainability has to look cute. For so long, sustainability movements have focused on change at the micro level, and it hasn't helped. That is to say, we want individuals to bear the brunt of the burden. Take 5-minute showers. Somebody said earlier, recycle, reuse. There's nothing wrong with encouraging individuals to do their part. We have to do that. But you know who never seems to be accountable for their part? The entities that are causing the most destruction. Those who are producing the most unsustainable products. Those who are encouraging us to overconsume. Those who are creating the most pollution. The corporate class, including the militaries that sustain them. I'm being made to feel like the worst person alive for using a straw, while Exxon Valdez dumps 10 million gallons of crude oil into the Pacific Ocean. And one ship captain walks away with a misdemeanor conviction for negligence, while the EPA politely asks Exxon, would you please, if you can, clean it up? We have to decide what we want. Do we have what it takes to be bold enough, firm enough, demanding enough to commit to the work of sustainability? If not, don't invite me to any more panels. This isn't an academic discussion. My community's lives are on the line. It's not about isolated thou shall nots, but comprehensive movement strategies to produce the world that we want to live in and that we want to see our children live in and our children's children live in. That is the goal. And so our policy decisions have been for too long individualist and incremental because we have been convinced on purpose that that's the only way. The people most directly affected by the sustainability problems, the poor people, the non-white communities, the global south, they have to be at the forefront of our policies. They must be the ones that we consult. They can't be bystanders. They can't be people that we talk about, but people that we talk to and center in the solutions. And if we don't move from the micro and the meso over to the macro public policies, we will be having these same discussions in 50 years. And our inept public policy decisions will still be grounded in questions like, how do we balance our need for AI development and technological advancement with the number of children who are going to die from cancer because of our data centers? Do we have what it takes to have very serious policy discussions about what's going on with sustainability? Are we bold enough to be inventive, to be creative in our solutions, to ruffle the feathers and systems of power that we usually just leave alone while telling everybody else, you didn't pick up the piece of paper on the street? I will stop there. I'm at my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me go after that a little bit more, globalism. It's all about extraction. And right now, in our extraction process, the Earth Overshoot Day, that is the day that we pass during a given year, the point where we can no longer regenerate resources. This year was June 24th. So everything we do after June 24th is extracting from the planet. We're living as if we had about at least 1.8 planets and 2 or more in reserve. It doesn't work very well. It's an impossible situation, and Mars is not an answer. So how do we get ourselves in this mess, really? For some reason, we were entrapped by outsourcing. Somebody else can do it better than we can. That's not true, because we have outsourced so much that we have become commodified. And what has commodified us? Big capitalism. There are 2 kinds of capitalism. And the one that I'm pessimistic about is big capitalism. Big systems cannot work. There's so much corruption, corrosion, inefficiency in big systems. They just don't work. That holds for countries, that holds for any kind of organization. Bigness is badness. It took me a long time as an older person to realize that what's good for the corporations is great for our country. To realize that now that there are a lot of nuances there. And so we're basically destroying things at an unsustainable rate, clearly. So several years ago, I took the position that every system is tipping, and I believe that's the case. Every system, human systems, natural systems. And what is what are our values? We have commodified life. we patent life. We're doing a lot of things that just don't work for a sustainable life on this planet. So, I'll keep track of some time here. The thing that, so, our extraction rate is so high that we have to change. So, globalism is a bad idea, and we have to abandon it. We don't have to fight it. This is not about resistance, this is not a movement. Our movement has been globalism, and it's been financed by billions of dollars and oligarchs that say globalism is the way to go. Well, they're not right, they're wrong, because globalism and big capitalism commodifies everything about us. Life has a value. Some lives have more value than others. Well, all life, all DNA life forms are extremely valuable. And these are to be appreciated, and we can work together in all cases. But and we have to switch our movement from a globalist movement to a localist movement. So I'm a localist, and that's, you know, call it that. And the idea is that the design template for this is eco-village, the idea of an eco-village. How many people have heard of eco-village? Eco-villages are the best of farms and the best of villages, all human enterprise, co-located. So by co-locating, we bring our attention, we create a small, sustainable, circular economy at the local level, so that we can have as our highest priority our health and wholeness for each of us, for every single life. And the planet can sustain this because nature is so abundant. Every day we get about 100 times more energy than we're using currently on this planet to extract everything. So the sun is giving us an energy food chain that allows us to be extremely, not only sustainable, but abundant. The characteristics of the organization that we have is democracy, non-abusive freedom, and true abundance. The abundance of our local neighbors being our best friends, that we are able to practice all good habits of how we get along with each other. And so the movement rather than globalism is localism. Let's make that a movement. And what that means is every single place on this planet, you can think of it as a mean square mile if you like, every topology, every place on this planet is a place for abundance. Nature proves it all the time. When we leave nature alone, nature makes abundance wherever it is allowed to flourish. If we cut all the trees down, we're killing that abundance. So nature on its own makes everything abundant. The air, trees can clean the air. Moringa trees can purify the air and take plastic out of the air in 98, 99% of the cases. Certain ways that we prepare foods can cause plastic, for example, as one of the major pollutants these days. So we have about 60,000 of human-made chemicals in our bodies now. It's amazing. I think our awesomeness is that we can function so well, even with all this contamination that we're living with. But it's a dangerous level of contamination at this point, so we can't fool around. The idea of the air alone is causing 9-10 million people a year to die prematurely. That we put lead in gasoline is responsible for maybe 130 million people dying prematurely. Lead poisoning. I mean, it's staggering what we have done to ourselves. We've not been our best friends. In fact, We've allowed certain people to be apex predators, feeding on, what is everything possible that can be commodified. So, the word eco-village then means that we are working together and say, can we do eco-villages? Well, we're already doing them. There are many exemplary ones. Where, if you think of it in terms of people are already surviving coldness that's colder than this planet can be for probably 7 generations. People are already surviving in places where the heat would not allow, if the whole planet were that hot, would not allow survivability. So people are already doing oases. We know how to do it, and there are some that have been very successful. I'll give you, and this could be done within a generation, by the way, and within 10 to 15 years, really, how we build eco-villages, because and food is, I'll start with food. We can use perennial plants to grow food, and far more abundantly, far cheaper and much higher nutritional content than our force-grown food in big agriculture that destroys billions of tons of topsoil every year just in the process of stirring up the underground. So our soil is a treasure that we're not using hardly at all. We grow grass to mow, and that's one of the most expensive crops, and it's totally unproductive for us as food. But if we plant food forests, perennial plants, and there's a perennial plant for growing everything, and I'm not throwing out the annuals, some annuals are very important, and we can still have all of those, but we can be much more prosperous. And food forests have been used, that were planted in London in the 1980s. We were on the right course in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in doing these things. But globalism took over in the 1980s, and so we've been on the wrong track for 50 years or so. And so our neighborhoods are the place to be. And so it's place-based. You have to put together systems, build systems within place that interlock with each other and create abundance. So with food, it's perennial plants. With finance, it can be the community land trust is a way that local people in neighborhoods in Boston are used in this city to say we local people are going to combine our funds and we're going to invest in owning as a group our land. It's going to be our commons. And we're going to find a way to work with that land to create wealth and abundance from that land. And it's not the globalist we, it's the localist we working together. We know how to build shelters. We are good at that. And that's another local function. So everything in every neighborhood can be done. And buildings can be built in such a way that they don't absorb energy, they create energy. One good example of that would be the Bullitt Building in Seattle. It's been for 20, 25 years, generating its own electricity, capturing its own water, and recycling waste with that one building. So everything we do at the local level can have a productive value. It's helping us achieve abundance. And what makes that process, it's possible to have, and it has to be democracy. We're not talking about putting ourselves in a position where we're going to do oligarchy or plutocracy or aristocracy or any of that. It has to be based on equality. Our very DNA has a good code for us. our code, the DNA code itself, makes us all the same. We are 99.999% the same. But our epigenetics, how our genes express themselves, and this was a surprise and not known until a few, 3 or 4 decades ago, how the genes express themselves makes each of us totally unique. And nobody else occupies that kind of space. And we are a massive collection of cells that have enormous number of capabilities. And we're all unique about that. And every eco-village, every local village will be unique, but it has to grow from within. It cannot be dictated top down. So we have to do that. We are the developers that we have been waiting for. And I myself, I've always had an indication and an eye for improvements. How can things be improved? Because I'm not looking for personal gain for it. I just say, no, let's take some friction out of the culture we're building. And that friction can be taken out best right in our own local communities. I will go further. I will say all health and wealth starts locally somewhere. Charles Koch doesn't automatically earn $4 million an hour because he's a really fast and hard worker. He is siphoning, hoarding huge amounts of money that take it away from the local. So local circulation of currency and local circulation of, I'll say it this way, intelligence. Now, live, work, play, local communities make it possible for us to use our collective human intelligence. For the work I've done in several different projects as a project manager, as a project designer, couldn't be done if I was just me. And I've always found ways to work with teamwork. And you have to understand, we're not real good at this right now. We don't know how to communicate with each other. We have been diseducated, intentionally uneducated, since 1973, when it was declared that maybe we were educating these youth too much. They're thinking that they can do something in this world. A lot of students got beat up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and a lot of adults. Anybody who said, well, we can't keep doing what we're doing. But now we have to stop doing what we're doing and change our way to all being locals and paying attention to our local condition. There are a number, so I mentioned teams as an important part of it. While we're doing this, we have to keep our balance. Our top priority is wellness and wholeness, I suggest, is for everyone. And our values need to be the democracy, the freedom, the ethics, not laws. Laws are for controlling people, and we have tons of laws. But ethics are how we control ourselves and how we manifest our individual capabilities. So there are 3 ways to build locally, 3 co-equal things we need to do. One is you have to be your best self. I have to be my best self at the local level, not dominating somebody else, but at the local level. And so that's a challenge that we're maxing our individual efforts, but not for personal gain, but for group gain. And that group gain, all groups, family groups, all our enterprises that we humans do, are co-equal to the self. Let's keep the values high for self, for our teamwork, and how we do enterprises, And thirdly, again, co-equal, how we do communities, how we build eco-villages. Every single one will be different, unique, and if democratic, it'll be open and tolerant. All of us will want to be involved with more than one eco-village. I'm not advocating that we isolate ourselves in one place. We can have sister eco-villages and have available public transportation to get to any of them anywhere in the world at affordable cost. So that's a kind of abundance we can build. We don't need to. I'm not talking about abundance where each of us has a Rolls Royce or a Lamborghini, but that where we might have one for the neighborhood. We might use it a couple hours a year, something like that. It's entirely possible if we want to do that, if that's what. But we do have to have. If we do work together at the local level, our actual labor for thriving well, individual health basis and sufficient wealth is probably about 10 hours a week at most. And that's probably doing something you like rather than something you don't like. And there's plenty of time existing. So that can be built. So those three things, the self, our teamwork, all groups, all enterprises, and the eco-village environment that we build place-based. It has to be place-based. I used to think it'd be possible to solve problems here, there, and I've solved problems in technical problems, social problems, and local development problems in Boston and New England and various places, in Albuquerque and the Southwest and in California and so on. But one has to concentrate ultimately on a place, and in that place, or places, I'm saying each of us can be involved in multiple eco-villages developing, but always respecting the environmental place, paying attention to it, because it has needs that are every topology, every square mile, let's say, of the walk around space, has its own needs for air, water, soil, and so on. So respecting that is respecting the planet and respecting the environment. Any questions or anything you want to pick up on with what I'm saying here, Daniel?
I think you did a great job. I was about to open it up actually, just to general discussion. So
thank you.
What do you believe is the biggest myth circulating in our society that's preventing us from moving into the future that we're discussing?
I'll take one. The biggest myth I'm saying is that somebody else can do it better than we can. In our place, my place, our places where I am, I'm going to take responsibility for doing the best for that place and for my associates. But we have been rolled and gold into somebody else can do better. An elitist kind of way of thinking. It's not true. We humans have enormous, each of us have enormous capabilities. Certain circumstances that the most unsuspected person might actually be the best person, local person for solving that problem.
I think very much connected to that, the biggest myth is that we can't fix it. We can't do anything. There's so much work going into making everyone feel that they have no agency and that they are disempowered. And there's an active work to take away information so that it perpetuates that feeling. But at the end of the day, we control every decision, even if it's a silly, small one. And reminding yourself to make those decisions, to exercise your agency, and to align them with your values. Because I think that's another piece of this. There's so many issues
person's going to be able to do all of that. But if you know what you are motivated by, what drives you, your values, and use your agency, remind yourself how powerful you actually are in every single decision that you can. Not every single. I'm not saying you have to do it all the time, right? It's not, to your point, it's not about doing it perfectly all the time. It's pushing back against that myth that you can't change the world, because hundreds of thousands of small actions taken by hundreds of billions of people around the world will change things.
I would say probably that incrementalism is the best policy model. It is not. That window has closed. What we need now is some radical thinking about what's going to make a difference.
This panel was brought together by the E2E Committee of Roanoke Indivisible and Indivisible at Virginia Tech.